Hi everyone, my name is Daniel Lugo. I'm a student at the University of Louisiana in the College of Engineering studying civil engineering. I'm on my senior year. I'm here with Ms. Jeanne Hornsby. Ms. Jeanne, if you don't mind introducing yourself.
Hi, I'm Jeanne Hornsby. I'm from Lafayette, Louisiana, and I work at CH Fenstermaker and Associates here in Lafayette. I'm a civil engineer there, and I am an engineering director over their water resources group, and I'm also a proud alumni of UL Lafayette. Yes.
Go Cajuns. Yes, ma'am. If we can just get, I want to have some questions for you, if you don't mind answering for me. A good kind of general question to get started with is, why civil engineering?
So I actually ended up in civil engineering. My father is a civil engineer, so I grew up in a world around other civil engineers. His focus was actually more on the construction side and water wells, but growing up around him, and he worked for a lot of municipalities, I saw the need and kind of, it always intrigued me of the variety of work. I'm not a person that really sits in one spot. I love the fact that I got to work with different things and with different people, and just something that kind of gave back to our communities and helped people. So.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, it sounds like it was most of a vocation. You said water wells.
Yes.
It seems like a little bit of connection as well there.
Yeah.
So I want to just jump into one of my first questions real quick. So I'm a young engineer. I'm going to be graduating quite soon. And one of the big questions that we have is essentially just we get concerned with our first couple of weeks going in. You've gone through your interview process, you've done your resumes and your cover letters and what have you, and now your first day is set. What are some tips that you give for engineers, especially in civil engineering, that could really assist them in getting through those first couple of weeks?
First advice is relax. We've all been there. We've all had our first day's work and our first few weeks, but also just go in with an open mind. You know, you've gone through college, and college is there to prepare you to problem solve and to learn, and you're never going to stop learning. I learn every day in my career, and so those first few weeks can sometimes be overwhelming. You know, you're dealing with real world things, and remember, you're actually getting on to a moving train. Like, the work isn't stopping, so you're coming into the middle of projects, you're coming into a lot of different things. So I tell people, ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. That's how you learn. Start identifying who your mentors are. And sometimes those mentors are people that have 15, 30 years experience. Sometimes those mentors are maybe somebody you knew in college that's kind of knows the ropes a little bit better. Pick those people out and kind of, let them guide you, and just have an open mind. It's not going to be an answer to every problem in front of you, but you've got to learn, and you will learn. And there's people there. You're not by yourself.
And you're right, there's not always going to be an answer in front of you.
Yeah.
After all, engineering. And you mentioned something about, engineers jumping in, especially when you join a company, kind of in the middle of it. There's no, in a train, there's no stops that you can just jump on. You kind of jump, and it's just like you're either at the end or starting a project or something like that. When you have an engineering coming in, especially someone with not so much experience, how do you go about briefing them to just kind of come to date or come, get them to up to date on the project?
Usually they're working alongside another professional engineer or even like another EI, and we allow them to sit in meetings. There's a lot of reading. When I went in to be an engineer, I thought I was doing math, but to my surprise, there's tons of reading. So you'll get familiar with the contract, you'll read meeting minutes, you'll sit in on meetings and just listen, and you'll be surprised how fast you're going to get familiar with things and jump on board. But we do ensure that, and I know most engineering firms, we know we've all been in that seat before, and so we get you familiar with those different spots, but ask questions.
I see. It's definitely important to ask questions and create this kind of safe environment where people can do it, which kind of leads into my next question, which is basically just a question regarding work culture. So a lot of recently, especially as 2000s and the 2010s kind of dawn in, companies like Google and Amazon have begun kind of revolutionizing what the workspace is like. And I wanted to kind of get into basically what I'm kind of searching for it real quick because I can't remember off the top of my head, but essentially, how do you balance that? How do you balance, making someone feel comfortable in the workplace where they can, go out and have fun with their workmates, or like you mentioned, ask questions and get them more initiated when it's such a traditional job as engineering, as far as, ancient Mesopotamia or what have you. So how do you get them kind of acquainted in this work culture, but also work?
Yeah. So culture is extremely important. At Fenstermaker, we really, we say we're family. And I tell people when they interview, ensure you like where you're working, because you spend more time at work than you do really at home a lot of times, because these are the people you're with and you're interacting. So that culture is really important. You have to find the right atmosphere that works with you and kind of what you're looking for. For us at Fenstermaker, we pride ourselves on flexibility. We think that's really important, especially for a generation of dual working parents where both of them are in the workforce. Flexibility is extremely important to allow parents to go to the play or go watch their child do something at school or make that baseball game. So for us, flexibility is really important. We do other things where our groups play volleyball together after work. Every engineer loves a good competition. So whether it's frisbee golf or volleyball, trivia nights, we love those things. But finding a company that offers you those things, if that's what you're looking for, is extremely important, because that makes our camaraderie amongst everybody of that team atmosphere where everybody's working together. So finding those relationships. We have some guys at work that are godparents to each other's children. They really become close. Some of my best friends are the people that I've worked with, even currently, or even when they move on, I've stayed in contact with those people. So your friends from college and your friends from the workforce, that's what they are. They're friends, and they become family.
And that's definitely very important to many people entering. And may I say, I love volleyball. Something preparing for this interview, something that I was researching who you were and the like, and I looked forward a lot to this interview, because it refreshed me to know that you have a lot of leadership skills. And in today's world, especially when you're graduating, we get really bogged down in this sensation of, do we have enough experience? What does our resume look like? Who do I know? When I think, in my opinion, and maybe I would like to get your opinion on this as well, a lot of it kind of boils down to, can you work well with other people? What is your leadership like, and whatnot? How do you, given yourself, who've had so much experience with leadership, how do you value that in a work environment, particularly with new engineers?
I think leadership is really important, and as engineers, not only are we here, this is my opinion, not only am I here to work on projects and make a difference, but to me there's so many other ways that we as engineers can give back to the community. Whether it's through volunteering, helping at your school, at your children's school to build a parking lot or a recreation park or things like that. There's so many things that our brains, they function differently, and we're problem solvers, and there's so many ways that you can contribute. So I've done that, and those things have helped me with my leadership skills, because they've taken me from just the problem solving and the calculating of numbers to applying it to people. Because that is our job, we have to look at that quality of life aspect. And when I've applied it there, that has taken and added to my leadership skills that I've been able to take back and, promote myself within my career of investing in that time. That's another thing. You have to invest in yourself. Take every opportunity that you have to learn, whether it's learning technically or if it's learning supervisory. Take that opportunity, because that's something that no one will ever take away from you, no matter what job you go to. You want to invest in yourself, and those little pieces add to those things that make me a leader. And look, there's different types of engineers. There's going to be the ones that want to go further and be more of the leader of the company. And then there's people that are just as important, because they are the ones that help us execute. And both pieces are valuable to any company. And it's important to kind of, you'll figure out your own path, but take advantage of any opportunity you have, whether it's in the community, staying involved, or whether it's in the office, just learning through different things that get put in front of you.
It's a very interesting point, and I definitely agree with a lot of it. I'm somebody who likes to go to a lot of conferences. Generally, they're cultural conferences. I'm Venezuelan, and I was head of the Vietnamese club. That's a long story. So I make my way to a lot of conferences. I, however, have not gone to an engineering conference. When we're speaking about leadership, I'm sure there's a topic that is touched upon. How important do you consider those engineering conferences, not just in terms of leadership, but also in terms of staying up to date with technologies as an engineer?
So I think conferences are a great opportunity for us to think together as a group of engineers. I like both. We encourage people to go to conferences. Both as engineers, we're set. You have to get your professional development hours, which is a reason that a lot of people go. But when you go, it opens your eyes to like, what are other engineers doing? What are other firms doing? And also, look, we're in an age of technology, so it is a great place to learn like what's coming up. How can we do things better? So I think conferences are really good for both you, for your continuing education, and also to kind of, I like to brainstorm. I like to see like, okay, what are they doing in Texas? What are they doing in California? I would encourage any engineer to go beyond the engineering technical conferences. There's conferences that kind of tie other elements. Because I'm in water resources, floodplain management is huge. So we're actively involved in that, and we go to that conference. That conference is not primarily engineers. It's a lot of politicians. It's a lot of civil service. And so going and hearing their problems, hearing what they deal with, makes me have to think differently as an engineer, because that's whose problems I'm helping. And so it's important not to just go learn the technical, but to participate where you can in these other styles of conferences where you can hear who your client is, who your end user is, and what are their needs. And those two things together can make you a really strong engineer and a really strong engineering company when you invest that time.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like when people say engineering conferences, especially when you're like in high school or even early college, you get this idea of, oh, I have to sit in a room and listen to people talk. But when you get closer to your senior level course and you start talking to professionals and whatnot, you start getting this idea of, oh, I have to sit in a room with people and hear them talk. One of the things you mentioned, to some degree, civil engineering is very intertwined with policymaking and what have you. Someone, and I hear you also have a lot of experience with this person. His name is Dr. Robert Miller. He's my hydrology teacher at the university.
And my best friend.
I've had the pleasure of speaking to him, and we've had a lot of substantive conversation regarding a lot of that. How sometimes when it comes to speaking to the public, it is very difficult to translate a lot of terminology to the public and get them to kind of understand. You mentioned in a podcast January 2020 about that, you know, they say, oh, we don't like flooding here, but if we fix flooding here, it'll cause flooding somewhere else, you know? So how do you measure in terms of water resources? Explain to them that, hey, yeah, we are a community, but we're kind of a large community. How can you incite? No, that's the wrong term. How can you help people understand as a community at large how important engineering is?
So first of all, Dr. Miller and I went to grad school together. So we worked for 12 years together alongside each other. So I've got a great love for Dr. Miller and all that he contributes to the profession as well as to the students. And this morning I actually had a lengthy meeting with Dr. Habib and some of the Blanco policy group. So it was really great, and talking about just that. As engineers, we know the technical. You know, we have so much information in front of us. The technology's there. We've got the experience. We've got everything that we have. The biggest struggle right now is for us to communicate that to the general public and also to the policymakers. So there's a gap right now between that, and I've been trying to work as much as possible with planners and with policymakers of how can we bridge that gap. Because just like you said, like one thing that may fix one community's drainage problem, we want to ensure that we're not pushing it on to someone else. We also want to ensure that the decisions that we make today are not problems that we're having to fix in the future. One of my clients said the other day, like, we've got to stop building our problems, because the homes that are flooding today and the homes that we're elevating, if we don't elevate them to the proper elevation, they're going to be the homes that we're elevating in 50 years. So, I think the biggest thing that we can do is we host town halls. We try and get the public in and interact so that they can get a better understanding of why do we need that pond? Why do we want it wet? It's actually easier to maintain when we put a wet pond in and a dry pond, less to mow. Like, there are reasons why we're making these decisions. And so the more that you can have like town hall functions, social media is great if used properly. We've been doing live streaming, we've doing some webinars in Calcasieu Parish that are open to the public so that they can learn different elements, and what I say, learn the why. Why are we recommending these things? And figuring out better ways to tie the very technical with the policy side so that, what we all want, when nobody wants to flood, we want to create what I tell people and then tie it. Look, we've got an abundance of water, y'all. It can be used as an asset. Where can we use it for fishing? Where can we use it so that we have, ponds for recreation and things like that? And some people say living with water, and I think that's a great way of looking at it. So
something that you mentioned was essentially sustainability. And right now, as a senior, we're all kind of coming to terms with it because it's something that is required from our senior design project, which is, you mentioned we have an abundance of water. In our case, we're designing a landfill, so we have an abundance of waste. Yes. And I, along with some of my other classmates, were put in kind of a sustainability team to help coordinate, okay, well, yes, it's effectively, and I'm sure some people would take issue with this, trash. However, we have to make sure that that water from that trash doesn't, the leachate doesn't leak into the subsurface. Yep. Maybe we can harvest the methane. Right now, our sustainability group is thinking of perhaps we could put solar panels on it. It is important to consider that as well, about what is it like 50 years, 100 years, 500 years in advance for communities, not just the United States at large, but communities like Acadiana or South Louisiana in general. Coming into an employment as a young engineer, perhaps it may feel like we're not ready to kind of think about that. We're thinking, we want, where's the water balance equation, or the watershed, or I did one project with Hegras. But sometimes, especially when you're civil engineering, people often concentrate on the engineering part and not so much on the civil part. It's a lot of communicating with the community to be able to give, in my opinion, a concentrated and a well-meant recommendation. And I think that's very important. And generally, one of my questions is, given that there is such a large almost knowledge disparity between young engineers and intermediate engineers, what would you, I'm trying to see how I can best word this question. Effectively, how would you, as someone in a position of leadership, help a young engineer kind of understand that gap? That sounds kind of rude to say that way, but and bring them up to speed in that same. I know it's kind of similar to a question I asked before, but I do sense it.
No, one of the things I have to say is I love the knowledge gap. I actually do, because it challenges us. It challenges both ends of the spectrum. And one of the things that I learn from my new hires, just as much as they learn from me. I had one the other day, and I was, here's my problem. And next thing I know, he wrote code. He came back. He had this whole website, and I was like, cool. I didn't even know we could do it. So I think that knowledge gap plays in both ways. I think it's just as important for the older engineers to teach the younger ones the whys. We go through the calculations and we teach those things, and also just checking plans, ensuring quality. We move in a fast-paced world, and so one of the biggest things we work with the younger engineers is to slow down sometimes and check your work. And quality of work is so important, because that's what keeps your clients coming back, and that honesty and that going through that. But I think at the same time, on the other side, there's so many things I learned from the generations that are coming up that grew up with computers and iPads and iPhones and all these things, and their need to make things more efficient, their needs to make things, better. Like you said, thinking about the sustainability. When I graduated 15 years ago, that was a word that was not said that much. Adaptivity, sustainability, all of these things that you hear, these key words, but they were there, but they just weren't talked about as much. And so that is where I say y'all challenge us, because that challenge is important, because it keeps us creating and solving problems that meet what you said, that civil side, that are what's best for the communities, what's best for the people. So I think it's a good balance, And I often tell the people I work with, don't be afraid to ask me why. It's not a me tell you what to do. So why are we doing that? What's going on? And it's okay, because a lot of times we're moving so fast that why slows us down, and that becomes that teaching moment. So take advantage of asking the why.
I love them. I love that philosophy. I think I'm somebody who I love to talk and I love to ask questions. And I've been told through a lot of academia, be quiet, be quiet, you're asking too many questions, or it's too much. And my philosophy ended up developing in, if they can't answer a question, it's not my problem. That's something that they should look into as well.
Yeah, I always tell people too, ask me your question, but also be ready to discuss it too.
Right.
So have your own opinion. Don't expect me just to give you the answer. Hopefully I know the answer. but
sometimes you don't.
And sometimes I don't. And sometimes we figure out the answer together. As engineers, we know how to solve those problems. That's what we've taught. We're not learned the answer to every problem. We've learned how to figure out the answer to problems. And sometimes we'll figure it out together, me and the younger engineer. But I always tell them, don't expect me to just give you the answer. I'll ask you the question right back, because I want to know what your opinion is, because someday I'm not going to be sitting at that table with you. So it's important for you to think on your own as well. So I think there's a balance, definitely a good balance.
I consider that probably a big difference within academia and work, because when you're in school, it is all about asking questions, and you're not expected to know everything. So I can show up to my teacher's work office hours and being like, I don't understand what you said today in class, and it's kind of like, oh, well, yeah, I'll explain it to you, Whereas now, especially now as I'm getting to my senior years, that expectation has started to kind of pull back, All right, what did you think I said in class?
Yep.
And it's like, well, I have no idea. Okay, well, it tells me you're not listening. So you're not putting the time in.
Yep.
I can definitely understand that as well. Kind of shifting gears a little bit, I wanted to discuss the concept of morale in a workspace. A company has its highs and it has its lows sometimes. And when you are, I think it becomes you're more susceptible to it when you're just starting, because you don't understand, may not have a sturdy connection with the company yet. You may not understand the flow of it. So seeing a dip in that morale might feel like, oh, this is it, Being someone of leadership, once again, how do you contend with engineers who kind of go into it thinking, oh, well, I kind of want to be a big voice. And like you said, in a world that's moving really quickly, you think that, oh, in 3 months or 6 months, I'm going to be, I'm going to be sitting in meetings and discussing and saying everything I want to say, when in reality, sometimes it's best to sit down and listen. How do you contend with young engineers who might begin to kind of lose that spark and their morale begins to decrease as their passion just doesn't shine as strong anymore?
Yeah, I think morale is definitely something, like you said, that it's sometimes a roller coaster. I think one of the pieces for me is being honest and transparent. I think the more transparency you have of what's going on within the company, the more that it makes it can control that morale, and they'll understand what's going on and the why. I feel like a lot of times when morale's down, it's mostly because someone doesn't know something, or there's always that why. So why are we not fixing that solution, or why are we not? Someone recently challenged me, and it was one of the best things I'd heard in a while, of like, when you're in that situation and you don't know, ask yourself, what do I not know that I don't know? because there's usually a reason why someone has made a decision or something's going on within a company that you may not be aware of. And there may be a reason why we can't have total transparency at times, And so there are those reasons, and I think honesty is one level. The other thing is ensuring people that they can talk about it. I feel that's the other thing is when the morale gets low, it's a lot of what we call in our office hall talk. You hear hall talk, and it's kind of that whisper game that you played as a kid, and then by the time it makes its way around, it's not true, or it's not even
completely
close.
Contorted.
And so, work is just like anything else. It's got people involved. When you involve people, there's different personalities, different emotions, and those can affect morale. But addressing it, I think having those conversations is important to ensuring it. And then also, I think even when there's downs, you talked about culture earlier, that when you have a good culture, the fun things, all right, maybe we're having a bad day at work, maybe we're behind schedule on something, but then when we can all get together and do something and celebrate the win together, that it picks that morale back up, and everybody's like, okay, we got this, and it gives you that extra boost of like, okay, let's go on to the next project. So, that balance, I think, with everything, it's all about balance. So.
Yeah, that's certainly great, especially when you have, those big project wins. I know Fenstermaker has won some awards in that regard with big projects in transportation as well.
Yep.
So, and it's easy when you're a college student to get into these episodes of just like, almost very semester episodes. Oh, there's going to be a final at the end, and then break, and then start up, final, and so and so. What would you categorize that kind of flow when it comes to a company?
So for a company, there's definitely no Christmas breaks anymore, semester breaks. So you don't have those to look forward to, but again, I used the word balance earlier, and that is what it is. So you take your vacations, you have those different moments. And from the work side of things, you've got projects. This is a big change for me, was projects last years. They're not something that you're gonna work on and in 30 days have the completed thing that's going, like the way things flow between getting projects funded and designing them and all the different elements. Sometimes it takes years. I have a project that's under construction right now that I've worked on. I started in 2011. So it takes a long time for some of these to come through, but man, when the win is there, it feels so good. And those are the pieces that you're pulling together as a group, and I think that helps because you're not doing it by yourself. It's a team effort. I love the team side of things, of celebrating our wins, and there's enough. They all kind of fall into place, and so my level of the feeling of success in the workforce is so much more than what I experienced in school. I can't speak for everyone, but for me, it's the pride of, the grade was cool. I did that, and maybe it was a team project, but the success of a groundbreaking for a project that you watch was on a piece of paper, to getting funding, to designing, to people driving on, or whatever it might be, is such an amazing feeling that everything else just, for me it supersedes it. It's great.
Getting people to talk about how St. Mary was repaved and it's, it's nice. And I actually spoke to someone who works at Fenstermaker just today. And she was mentioning how she was riding her longboard and she went before they repaved it, and she fell because it hit a crack, and she was like, it's so much nicer now that I don't have to worry about that. So being able to look into those projects, I'm sure it's a great feeling, especially a project that's been going on since 2011.
It is.
When you finally see it completed and people are like, yes.
And you see everybody enjoying it, that project's a roadway project, and it's got sidewalks, and when I drive through it and I see kids just following their moms as they're walking, and just the enjoyment, that's what makes us as engineers proud of what we do, and that's adding to that quality of life element that we mentioned earlier.
I think all fields have their kind of moment. I think it's more evident in the medical field, where you directly help somebody overcome an illness, but when it comes to civil engineers, it's very rewarding to see that you've helped not just a particular person, but a community kind of flourish. And what have you. But overall, I want to kind of go back to that sense of community that we were talking about a little bit earlier, and how important it is to communicate with them. Right now, transportation is becoming a very hot topic issue, mainly because we do have rising gas prices and what have you. What would you consider relatively something that, in your opinion, that can be done to help in such a small town? I know your concentration is water resources, but I kind of want to just get your general opinion as somebody I'm personally really interested in transportation. So seeing where that's at right now seems like a very fun place to look into.
So I think it's interesting. I was in Colorado last year, and I was driving, and there was this nice, sign that was up in the middle of the construction that said what tax was paying for the project and what the construction cost was. And I thought it was really intriguing for me because it made people realize where their money was going. Like, someone voted on something, and this is where the money's being spent, and this is the cost of the project. And I saw it in multiple occasions where it was like, this project was funded through grant, whatever. And they put them up at all of their construction sites. And for me, it was a really neat thing that of applying where your money's going, like you mentioned, the gas prices and stuff, into a project itself. So I think when people know where their money's going, they're a little less adverse of the contention of the topic. But I think right now we're at an interesting point. Construction costs are so expensive. We're seeing projects that are coming in much more expensive than they were even 6 months ago. And so that is going to impact how we grow and how things are made. So, it's like, man, why is that road paved yet? Or why haven't they done that project yet? Construction costs are affecting it, and it's an interesting turning point. I don't know what the future holds. I do think being innovative is one of the pieces we have to think of, like, can we section projects off? What can we do? Because we don't want to stop. We need to keep moving forward. So, but yeah, it's definitely something that we're talking about in our office. I tell you, it's not just in our office. They're talking about it at conferences and panels of the impact of the construction pricing and its impacts to the engineering and just development in general.
So civil engineering is an incredibly, in my opinion, incredibly fun field. What do you think is something in your podcast that was held back in 2020, and we kind of spoke about it here. What do you? It was spoken about. What do you like the public to know? What is something that do you think the public should know about civil engineering that is perhaps not too obvious?
We're definitely cool people.
I've been trying that for years.
I got told the other day, of like, y'all engineers aren't just walking around with pocket protectors, I started laughing. I was like, that we are a field that cares about the people. We do what we love. It's not because we like to sit and calculate numbers or anything like that. We do it because we like the outcome. We like constructing things and making the world better and easier, whether it's driving or turning your faucets on or ensuring that someone can sleep when they hear rain on their roof. We love that element of our job, and it's often overlooked. I think a lot of people say, engineering, and they go straight to math and science. But like you said earlier, we are civil engineers. There's this very human element to what we do, and we think through things to ensure that what we're giving is something that is best for the public, the health, safety, and welfare, and that's the code of ethics that we live by, and it's important to us. So.
Certainly. Thank you very much, Ms. Jeanne. I appreciate you for coming and having
Daniel.
a dialogue with me. Thank you guys all so much for watching. Please don't hesitate to stop by our Engineering and Technology Expo, and I hope you guys have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.